Music has no rules. Yeah, no. Remember that sentence? I think it's kinda stupid. Yeah, sure, you can do whatever you want and no one is gonna rat you out to the cops, but music sure has some rules that you kinda want to follow. I'm not necessarily talking about music theory, which I assume is what that sentence is referring to. You definitely can play the, flat 9 on a major 7 chord. Just go listen to Ancient Secrets by Hago. Everything about that song is basically illegal. You can use parallel fifths in voice leading. I mean, maybe not in classical, but if you just listen to any Iron Maiden song, that's basically everything they do. And you sure can play triplets and straight eighth notes simultaneously. Just listen to this song by Lamb of God. It's a great example for that. Anyway, but there's a couple of things you need to know before you go and do these things. You need to know how to break these rules. These aren't strict commands that you must follow or else, but more aesthetic guidelines that each genre has accumulated over the years. And adhering to these guidelines will help your song sound appropriate for the genre that it's meant to be. These aren't meant to limit your creativity or bound your aim to preconceived notions about the music that you're creating. But certain genres have certain expectations, and those expectations are what makes those genres distinct. Take dance music, for example. I mean, it needs to be danceable, right? Imagine if I wrote a dance song in, 1316. Yeah. That's gonna be a pretty awkward dancing floor. Anyway, when creating a song, it's very important to think ahead about what's the purpose of this piece. Who are the aimed audience? What is the focus in this music? Is it a lead singer? Is it an instrument? Is it aimed to help the listener get into a certain mood? Alright. What sonic elements should I take into consideration? And how does a stereotypical mix of a song like this sound? Is this meant to be played live? Is this background music, dancing music? All these questions are very helpful to consider when working on your piece, and answering these questions will help you shape your piece and make the audience understand what to expect when they hear it. I mean, dance music needs to make you dance. Metal music is powerful and loud, jazz heavily leans on improvisation, and lo-fi background YouTube music is meant to help you focus on your homework. These differences have a huge impact on the music-making process, and they affect everything from the equipment that you use, all the way to the mental state that you're in while playing or composing. I'll give you an example. Here's a 4-chord progression in 4/4 at 125 beats per minute. I'll play these chords in this tempo and slide between genres, emphasizing those differences I mentioned. Notice how in many of these cases, you'd know what the genre is before I even say it. Let's start with pop. In a pop context, popular music, if you will, where the intention is to get as many people to relate to the song, there's an expectation for it to be catchy, short and concise, and to get through the chorus pretty quickly. It's preferably danceable, but not necessarily, and it might sound like this. This is very cheap pop. Notice the drums and bass are locked together, the drum sounds are tight and pretty high in the mix, the chords are in basic form, and there's a lot of room left for a vocalist to shine. If I play this song as a drummer, or if I need to write a drum part for this, I'll make sure that my tuning is appropriate, I'll make sure that I play exactly what the part is and won't deviate from it, my dynamics will be super consistent, and I'll remember that I'm here to support the vocals. How about this version? Sounds jazzy, right? And why is that? The general feel is swingy, the drums are very light and bouncy, and there's a very dominant quarter note pulse. The bass here is an upright bass, which is very common in jazz, and it's playing quarter notes that lay out the chords. And in general, there's a lot of playful syncopations. And of course, there's a lot of room left for a melodic instrument to play a melody or a solo. If I play drums here, I'd loosen up my approach to the groove a bit, focus my right cymbal and hi-hat, and try to lock with the bass part as much as I can. And I'll give myself permission to be playful and experiment a bit with where I play the kick and snare so I can react in real time to the music around me. What about this one? We all know what style this is, right? Loud distorted guitars, punchy drums that lock tightly with the bass and guitar pattern, you get the point. And for this style, I take the mix into consideration even more. The multiple guitar layers and heavy bass lead me to approach this groove like this. I need to be loud and clear, very steady and driven, and I'll probably keep my ghost notes to a minimum, if at all. The mix is so dense, as it should be for this style, that playing these small nuanced snare hits isn't very relevant. They won't cut through the mix at all, and if they do, they'll just add more mess to everything. These differences in stylistic approach towards different genres is something that took me a pretty long time to wrap my head around. Writing grooves in these different musical environments is not an easy thing, but knowing these aesthetic trademarks that each genre has can go a very long way. And again, remember, these guidelines aren't meant to put your music in some box that it wasn't intended to. Because, I know, your music is very special and you can't put it in a box. I know. But still, there are still some genre-specific cultural norms that are here to help. The music you create doesn't exist in a vacuum. People are supposed to listen to it, hopefully. So you want to make appropriate decisions that would amplify your intentions and would steer your song in the appropriate way. Another thing to take into account is the size of the band or the group. I found that the bigger the band is, the more necessary it is for each instrument to revert back to its original role. Drums keep time, bass plays root notes, guitars and keys plays harmony and melodies, and so on. So as a drummer, the bigger the group gets means that there are more players that count on me for the timekeeping aspect, which also means that I'll be inclined to keep things simple, steady and predictable. Think of the difference between a psychedelic rock duo, let's say drums and guitar, as opposed to playing with a huge orchestra. In the duo context, you have a bit more freedom to experiment, and if it so happens and you make a mistake, it's pretty easy to get back on track. You have only one other player that needs to jump back once a mistake is made, and that's generally easy to do. If you play in an orchestra and you have 20 or more players that are all reading sheet music, you have way more responsibility, because if you go off track, it's very hard to get everyone aligned again without stopping completely. It's similar to the difference between riding a bike and flying a plane. Maneuvering a bike is way easier. You can course correct pretty quickly. Flying a plane, on the other hand, yeah. So, to close this tutorial up, maybe we should change that sentence from the beginning with one from the dude himself, Picasso. Learn the rules so you know how to break them. He's famous, we should listen to him.